Have you ever felt like you are sleepwalking through your own life? You wake up, you follow the same routine, you see the same faces, and you go to sleep, only to do it all again the next day. It feels safe, doesn't it? But deep down, there is a whisper in your heart asking for something more. We often think that to change our lives, we need a massive explosion or a sudden miracle. But what if the secret to a completely new life isn't found in the loud moments, but in the quiet ones? What if one small, simple choice today could rewrite your entire future? Stay with me, relax, and let's discover how that change begins. My name is Tom. I am 30 years old, and for a very long time, I felt exactly like a boat stuck in a small harbor, drifting in circles but never actually going anywhere. I live in a quiet town near the sea. It is a beautiful place, but for years I never really saw it. I looked at it, but I didn't see it. Every morning was a carbon copy of the one before. The alarm would ring, shattering my dreams. I would drag myself out of bed, drink bitter coffee, take the same bus to work, sit at the same desk, and come home to the same empty silence. It wasn't a bad life. It was comfortable. But comfort can sometimes be a cage. I realized that I wasn't growing. I was just existing. And deep inside, I wanted to learn who I actually was. I wanted to become someone stronger, calmer, and kinder. So, on a morning that looked like any other, I made a silent pact with myself, a promise. I decided that I would simply say yes to new experiences. I wouldn't try to change everything overnight. That is impossible. Instead, I would try one new thing every week. Success or failure didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the effort. This leads me to my first step of my journey, and it reminds me of a concept I once read about called the power of small habits. It suggests that tiny changes create massive results. So I started small. On a Monday morning, instead of walking to the bus stop as I had done for 5 years, I decided to walk all the way to work. Stepping out the door, the air felt different. It was cool and crisp, hitting my face like a gentle wake-up call. The sky wasn't just blue. It was a soft, pale canvas, painting the beginning of a new day. As I walked, my senses began to wake up. I noticed a small bakery on the corner that I had passed 1,000 times on the bus, but never truly noticed. The smell of warm, yeast-filled dough and sweet vanilla drifted out onto the street, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I saw a cat sleeping under a wooden bench, stretching its paws, completely unbothered by the world. I saw a father holding his little daughter's hand, both of them laughing at a secret joke. These were ordinary moments. Nothing dramatic was happening. Yet because I was walking, because I was present, the world seemed to turn from black and white into color. I wasn't checking my phone. I wasn't rushing. I was just being. By the time I reached my office, my legs were tired. It was a long walk, much longer than I expected. There was a moment halfway through where I almost stopped to hail a taxi because my muscles ached. But I remembered my promise. Try new things. Don't give up too quickly. When I sat at my desk, I felt a vibration in my chest. It was energy. I felt awake, and that energy pushed me to take the next step in my evolution. I looked across the room at Anna. Anna was a colleague I had seen in the lunchroom for years. She was quiet, always with her nose buried in a book. I had always assumed she was too busy, or perhaps too smart, to talk to someone like me. I let my own insecurity create a wall between us. But today, fueled by my morning walk, I decided to break that wall. I stood up, my heart beating a little faster than usual, and walked over to her desk. "Hi, Anna. That book looks fascinating. What is it about?" She looked up surprised. Her eyes widened, and then a warm smile spread across her face. She told me it was a story about a woman traveling solo across Asia. We started talking. At first, my voice was shaky. I was nervous. Social anxiety is a real thing, and I felt it. But the more we spoke, the easier it became.
We talked about travel. We talked about food. We talked about dreams we had buried. I discovered that Anna wasn't too busy or too smart. She was kind. She was funny. She was looking for connection just as much as I was. That conversation taught me a vital lesson. Most of our fears are just shadows. They look huge and terrifying on the wall, but they have no substance. When you walk toward them and shine a light on them, they disappear. Later that week, feeling more confident, I decided to change my evening routine. Instead of going home to watch television, I walked down to the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and violet. Sitting on a bench, looking out at the horizon, was an old man. His face was a map of wrinkles, deep lines carved by decades of smiles and sorrows. But his eyes were bright, like young stars. His name was Samuel. He was 80 years old. I sat next to him. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the waves crash against the shore. "The sea is my oldest friend," Samuel said softly. "It teaches me something new every single day." "What does it teach you?" I asked. He pointed a trembling finger at the water. "Look at the waves. Sometimes they are gentle. Sometimes they are violent and angry. But the water never stops moving. It adapts. It flows. Life is the same, Tom. We must learn to flow with it, not fight against it." Samuel looked at me and said something that shifted my entire perspective. He said, "We grow when we listen. Most people are waiting for their turn to speak. But if you truly listen to the wind, to your friends, to your own heart, life will show you the way." I went home that night and wrote in my journal, "Today, I learned to listen. Wisdom often comes quietly." A few weeks passed, and I felt a new strength building inside me. It was time to tackle a bigger fear: public speaking. At my workplace, we have weekly team meetings. Usually, I am invisible. I sit in the back, nod my head, and say nothing. But I had an idea for a new project, an idea I had been nursing in my mind for months. The meeting began. My palms were sweating. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. A voice in my head whispered, "Don't do it. They will laugh. You will make a mistake." But I remembered my promise. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I raised my hand. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. I stood up. My voice started soft, barely a whisper. But as I spoke about my idea, passion took over. My voice grew stronger. I explained the project clearly. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. I thought I had failed. Then my manager smiled. "That is a brilliant idea, Tom. Let's explore it." A wave of relief and pride washed over me. Not because the idea was good, but because I had conquered the voice in my head that said I couldn't. Of course, not every experiment ended in victory, and this is important to understand. This isn't a fairy tale where everything is perfect. This is real life. I decided I wanted to be creative. I bought brushes, canvas, and paints. I had a vision in my head of a beautiful landscape. I set everything up,
played some classical music, and began to paint. The result was terrible. The colors were muddy, the trees looked like green blobs. It looked nothing like the picture in my mind. I felt a surge of frustration. I wanted to throw the canvas in the trash. I felt like I had wasted my time and money. But then, I remembered Samuel's words about the water flowing. I realized that failure isn't the opposite of growth. It is a part of growth. I hadn't painted a masterpiece, but I had spent an hour creating something. I had stepped out of my comfort zone. I didn't throw the painting away. I kept it. I kept it to remind myself that it is okay to be a beginner. It is okay to be imperfect. I continued to try new things. I started running. If you want to improve your English listening skills, or improve your physical health, or learn a new skill, the secret is patience. When I started running, I could only last for 5 minutes before my lungs felt like they were burning. I wanted to quit. I wanted to be a marathon runner on day 1. But you cannot shout at a flower and demand that it grows faster. You have to water it. You have to give it sunlight. And you have to give it time. So I ran for 5 minutes. The next week I ran for 10. The week after, 15. It was slow. It was invisible to everyone else. But inside, I was building a foundation. 3 months later, on a cool autumn morning, I ran for a full hour without stopping. Standing by the sea, breathing hard, sweating, I smiled. It wasn't magic. It was consistency. As the seasons changed from summer to autumn, I noticed another change within myself. I had spent so much time focusing on my growth, my fear, my goals. But Samuel had taught me that we don't grow alone. I decided to volunteer at a local community center. We were cleaning up a neighborhood park. That is where I met Leo. Leo was a young boy, maybe 16. He was standing at the back of the group, shoulders hunched, looking at the ground. He looked exactly like I used to feel, scared to take up space. I walked over to him. "Hey, Leo, do you want help me with these flowers?" He nodded silently. We worked side by side in the dirt. Slowly, I started asking him simple questions, just like I had done with Anna, just like Samuel had done with me. Over the next few weeks, I saw Leo transform. He started standing taller. He started joking with the other volunteers. One weekend, he even led a small team to paint a fence. Watching Leo grow gave me a joy that was different from my own achievements. It taught me that when we grow, we create a light, and that light helps others find their way out of the dark. One evening, late in the year, I decided to clean out my closet. I found an old cardboard box tucked away in the corner. Inside was an old notebook from 5 years ago. I opened the dusty pages. It was a list of goals. Make $1 million. Buy a sports car. Become famous. Reading it, I felt a strange sadness. I hadn't achieved any of those things. For a split second, I felt like a failure. But then I looked out the window, at the trees shedding their leaves for winter. The trees were letting go of the old leaves to make room for the new spring. I realized that the person who wrote those goals 5 years ago was a stranger. I wasn't him anymore. My dreams had changed because I had changed. I didn't want a sports car anymore. I wanted connection. I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. I took the notebook and threw it in the recycling bin. It felt incredible. It was a release. Letting go of who you thought you should be is the only way to become who you are. So, here I am now. It has been a year since I looked out that window and decided to change. My life looks somewhat the same from the outside. I still live in the same house, I still work at the same office, but everything is different because my eyes are open. If this story touched your heart or gave you a moment of peace, please take a moment to support the channel. It really helps us reach more people who might need to hear this message. Please click the like button And if you haven't already, subscribe to English Glow. Together, we can keep growing, one story at a time.